everybody. Welcome back to Leverage Lab Notes. This is our Breaking Barriers segment for our LinkedIn newsletter, where we interview and highlight inspiring women and the work that they do in businesses and organizations. I'm really excited to welcome and introduce Dr. Maria Sophocles today. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Sophocles. Dr. Sophocles is a gynecologist and a women's health advocate. She is the founder of Women's Healthcare of Princeton and a new personalized care practice called The Thinking Woman, with offices in New York, Princeton, and London. Dr. Sophocles is a Menopause Society certified practitioner and a recognized thought leader in menopause and female sexual function. She is a global women's health advocate. She is an intimate seeker of justice. I love it. She is a trusted voice in women's health. Her recent TED Talk and forthcoming book called The Bedroom Gap combines science and humor to illuminate what happens to sexual health in midlife. I am so excited to have you here. I've watched your TED Talk like 5 times. And I've worked with Dr. Sophocles for a little while, our agency, since 2020. We just recently launched her new personal website, which we're really excited about, back in March. She is brilliant and funny, and I am honored to have her here and to work with her and consider her a friend. So thank you, Dr. Sophocles.
Thank you, Missy. I feel like it's the pot calling the kettle black. You are so inspiring to me, and you also bring professionalism and education and advocacy to the women that you work with and inspire. And the women that I have introduced to you have all been so impressed by you. And so thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, we have to support and hold up each other. And you've been that for me for years, and you continue to impress me with all that you do. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about the questions that I prepped for you. I can't wait to hear what you have to say, but I want you to share a little bit about what inspired you to specialize in women's health to start with. And then particularly focusing on menopause and female sexual function. Like, why those 2 areas?
Right. I certainly did not set out to be involved in that at all. I wanted to be a cardiologist in medical school. I thought the heart was really interesting. And then once I looked into OBGYN, I realized that there had been a theme in my life of being interested in sort of the plight of women and women's ability to maybe behind the scenes be great artists and authors, but maybe not get the credibility. I did a thesis on the images of women in art and poetry, and I started looking at OBGYN in a couple of ways. One, I loved the surgery. I realized I'm a very impatient person, so I like beginning and end. Have a baby, deliver the baby. Need a hysterectomy, do the hysterectomy. But I also loved that I could care for women of all ages, and that was interesting. And so I went into OBGYN thinking I would do the OB and the GYN. And then once I moved to Europe with my family for 7 years. And once we returned, I had 4 little kids and went to look for jobs. And I interviewed at all these practices, and I was stunned at how uninterested and poorly trained the physicians were in gynecology compared to OB, but specifically in menopause and in sexual health. And I would ask the interviewers, what do you do for your menopausal patients? And they would all say, that's just a chapter of life. That's not our job. Our job is to deliver babies and do surgery. And one doctor said to me, we just hope the menopausal women don't open their mouth and they just get out of the exam room without asking us any questions about menopause. And I started to think, this is crazy, because 100% of women go through menopause, and they're coming to OBGYNs for information. And then I subsequently learned that 4 out of 5 OBGYNs were not trained in menopause. It simply was left out of training. So this just felt like a huge gap in what I needed to know. And I myself wasn't well trained.
Yeah.
So I started a practice. I gave up the OB and said, let's just do GYN and let's just focus on the things that maybe other practices aren't doing well: children, teens, geriatrics, cancer survivors,
Hmm.
sex, menopause. And then as I started to age and more of my patients started to age, they started to ask more and more about menopause. And I started to get involved with the North American Menopause Society, which is now just called the Menopause Society.
Yes.
And really had wonderful mentors there,
Yeah.
including Dr. Diana Bittner, who just was always so amazing to me in her ability to believe that education was important, an important
Yes.
part of advocacy.
Yeah.
And then I just sort of pivoted. I mean, the practice is still existent in Princeton, Women's Healthcare of Princeton. It still caters to women of all ages. But I myself have sort of narrowed the focus into not just menopause, but the sexual aspects of menopause, which get not talked about enough because there's still this shame and awkward prudishness in
Stigma.
our country about talking about sex and women's sexual issues. So it was my
Yeah.
own lack of training. Short answer, my own lack of training kind of inspired me to get more educated. And then it was really my patients asking.
Right. Yeah. And that leads me to thinking of the next question really is about your patient-centric approach. Like how do you work with patients to help them feel heard and valued and understood, especially when it's like a health situation that has that stigma attached to it?
Right. So in the practice, when I set the practice up, the brick and mortar practice, I focused on the whole patient experience. From the waiting room has really comfy chairs, not typical doctor waiting room chairs. And we put books on little tables around the room and there's of course coffee and tea machine. So people can sit and actually be inspired by some of the books, whether
Yeah.
it's books about the women's health gap or Vibrator
Yeah.
Nation is one of them,
I love
or,
it.
yeah, and so many women pick those books up and then they say, "Do you mind if I take this?" So sometimes I just replenish them and sometimes I give
Yeah.
them a website they can buy them.
Yeah.
We have welcoming front desk people who make sure they don't exude any sort of judgment or shame or stigma.
Yeah.
We have medical assistants who share information ahead of the clinician coming in so that we have videos or paper that people can read about menopause or about sexual
Right.
health while they're waiting for
Educational
the
things. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we call this the warm up. And then in the visit, I always say it's knee to knee, meaning I don't sit and type. I don't check my phone. I put my knees right in front of the patient's knees and I make sure they know that I'm fully invested in them. I give them time to speak. I give them permission to share intimate and maybe awkward things that they haven't shared
Yeah.
before. This is harder on video. Telemedicine has been a
Yeah.
wonderful blessing to healthcare. It's a little harder,
Yeah.
but you can still, as a physician or a provider, NPPA, you can still pause and let the other person speak. You can be a good listener. So I think that's the crux of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's something that I've always admired about you is that you have a way of creating that atmosphere for intimacy and
Mhm.
making people feel comfortable and making them feel like they can open up to you. And I think that's a gift that you have that not a lot of physicians do. I think it's that, the bedside manner type thing, in a way.
Yeah, well, I do think two points on that. One is that it's very hard as a physician because you know a lot, right? And people are paying and coming to get you to tell them something you know. So it's very hard to just not have that reflex to say, "Oh, I think I know what you have, Missy. You have
Yeah,
this, this,
there's
this,
the
this, and here's
problem.
how to fix it."
Right.
It's almost counterintuitive to pause and let them share more. But the more you
Mhm.
let a patient share,
Yep.
the more they'll tell you also what's their philosophy. Are they absolutely against all medication? Do they want to just
Right.
have a place to vent? Is there a marital problem under this sexual pain
Right.
problem?
Right.
Um,
Right.
they under a lot of stress, and that's impacting a lot of their symptoms. Because
Mhm.
sometimes they just need not just an ear, but they need to be heard, and what you hear tells you that it's maybe not just straightforward medicine that they need,
Right.
and it can
Right.
help you direct them to what they need, maybe as much as what you can offer them. So I think that's important to understand that it's not just your info they need, you know?
Right. Yeah. I love that. I think that's such a intuitive way to work with patients, to follow and listen and to be a good listener, I think is such a gift.
Yeah,
Um,
to unhook
and
your own thing. I mean, I'll tell you
yes.
one quick thing before
Yeah.
we do your next question.
Yeah.
When I was in medical school, I was walking around with a doctor and a bunch of other med students, and the doctor was each patient saying, "Now tell us about this," and asking the med students to share what they knew. And we were all nervous. And he got to a patient and he said to me, "Dr. Sophocles, why don't you tell us, what this weird symptom might mean?" And I didn't know. I really didn't know. And I wanted to know. I wanted to
Yeah.
be smart in his eyes, right? And
Yeah.
I looked and he could tell immediately that I just didn't know. And
Yeah.
he put his hand on my shoulder and he said to me, "You can look up the answer. It doesn't matter that you don't know." And I went, "What? Why?" And he said, "All that matters is that you care about that patient in that bed."
Mm.
And he said, "If you care, everything will flow from that."
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
was the most poignant thing, and I never forgot it. I never
Yeah.
forgot that it's okay if you don't have the answer, but if you don't care, the rest doesn't matter. So I try to bring
Yeah.
that into the exam room every day and
Yeah.
hope it comes across.
I think it does. You have amazing reviews. People always say wonderful things about you and as a physician. So thank you
Well,
for being.
I pay them for those reviews, so no, I'm kidding.
No, you
Just
don't.
I
So
know.
let's talk about your TED Talk. So your TED Talk and your book, which both were titled "The Bedroom Gap." I love how you blend the science and the humor together. How important do you think that approach is for reaching, people when it comes to using humor to talk about things? Because your TED Talk,
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I've watched it like 5 times, and it's so funny and it's so heartfelt and it's so true. Everything that you talked about.
Well, it works for me because it's my style. So Shakespeare
Yes.
said in Hamlet, "To thine own self be true." And I do
Yes.
think we do better when we're true to ourselves, when we
Yeah.
don't try to pretend we're hyper intellectual or hyper funny or hyper whatever it is that isn't really what's
Right.
natural to you. I mean, it's
Right.
scary to give a TED talk. Everyone's nervous before they do.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I wasn't nervous, but I was the last talk. And so they said, so I had to sit with all the people all day watching them be nervous. And so I started to
Yeah.
get nervous at the end saying, "Why aren't I nervous?" Um, it works for me because it's my style, but I also think that humor, it can disarm people, but it can relax
Yeah.
them. It can make
Right.
you able to feel more comfortable, and I want that with my patients. I want
Yeah.
them to feel comfortable. Humor isn't right for every patient, so I try to
Right.
read the
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's really why I bring humor to that and why I think it works, because I think if you get all too sciencey and serious and people are already feeling shame, there's so much shame that women feel
I know.
about
I know.
being sexually their most vibrant. And I think this has to do with our society and the images and tropes that we set up. And I think this is not just our society. This has been going on for so long that women have to really want to have sex and have to have an orgasm and have to have an orgasm from penile penetration and all these things that set us up for feeling like we failed.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What were some of the main key takeaway messages that you really wanted to get through in your TED Talk?
Well, this was really a problem for Ted because I had about 10 points. So they were like, "You should do 3 and you should keep it at 10 minutes." And I was like, "Oh," so it was really challenging. I was difficult for them because I had so much I wanted to share. And they're
Yeah,
right though, people lose interest, so you have to be focused. So first of all, what is the bedroom gap? The bedroom gap is a term I coined that means the difference in sexual expectations and maybe capabilities
mm,
between men and women in midlife. that in midlife, we age, our bodies age, women's bodies change, we lose estrogen, that affects collagen and blood vessels, orgasms, the clitoris, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And women often don't know that. Their partners don't know that. And it can be
Yeah.
this communication awkwardness and then performance awkwardness. And it
Yeah.
can really make for havoc in the bedroom. Men, on the other hand, for 25 years have had really effective meds for erectile dysfunction
Yes.
that are now used all over the world. And I
Right.
feel that Viagra didn't cause the bedroom gap, but it widened it. It
It
made
made it
the
bigger.
playing field uneven,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
What I think the other top key points are that medical training is very outdated. We are still being
Yeah.
trained to think of sex as not part of health, that
Right. Yeah.
infection is health, cancer is health or lack of health, longevity, is becoming a hot topic, but sex is
It is
something not, it's not
not.
doctors' problems.
Mhm.
But because many sexual problems have a physiologic basis, that is a doctor's problem and doctors
Right.
should know about it. But
Right.
very few OBGYNs have any training in that. Some urologists do, and there are some great
Yeah.
urologists that are standing up
Yes.
for women's sexual health.
Yes.
I think the talk also reflects the importance of the fact that the demographics of our country are changing,
Mhm.
that there are 500 million women with sexual issues in midlife on our planet right now. There are about 1 billion menopausal women. So it's too big a demographic to just be
Just
looked
ignore it.
away.
Right.
That's right, just
Yeah.
ignored. The talk also talks about estrogen and our persistent fear of estrogen, and that we
Yeah.
must unhook the estrogen fear with knowledge. And part of
Right.
this involves getting rid of the WHI studies,
Yeah. I saw something
magnetism.
yesterday. Yeah, I saw something yesterday about that, about a new study that was released in the Journal of American Medicine. I think I can't remember exactly, but it was the new headline was, hormones are safe for women in menopause, and it was like,
Thank
wow,
you.
that was a moment. Yes,
Well, the problem is that doesn't sell. What sells in the
right.
media is hormones cause
Oh,
cancer. Everyone
right,
publish that.
right,
So we
right.
have to say it's okay to publish good news. I think the other key part of that is separating the safety profiles of topical and systemic. Topical meaning local vaginal estrogen and systemic
Yes,
estrogen. That
yes,
vaginal estrogen is just so crazy safe that women don't need to fear it, but
right.
the FDA still puts this dangerous labeling on it. So we
I
have to
know.
get the FDA to stop that. They are misleading women, truly.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
the last thing is just that we as women have to advocate for ourselves. We can't wait for our providers to preemptively say, Missy, can you talk to me about your sexual health? Can you talk to me about menopause?
Right.
I
Right.
want to be a resource for you. They don't have time. They're busy. They're
No.
burnt out. And they're not well trained. I wish
Right.
it were different. But in
I
the
know.
meantime, you, Missy, need to go into that exam room with some
The
knowledge. And
questions
if
and
that
yeah,
clinician can't answer it, you need to go on the Menopause Society website and find a clinician
and
who
find
can.
someone. Mhm.
You also need to get educated yourself. You need to talk
Yeah,
to your partner, to your daughter, to your sister, to your mother, so that women of all ages can feel comfortable talking about issues and
right.
get support. Because I think we all have a right to pain-free sex. That's a really low
Yes,
bar. And we have a right to
yes,
sexual pleasure, which after millions of years of sex being for procreation or male pleasure, why
right,
couldn't we have female pleasure be part of that too? We
right.
should. We
Yes,
should.
absolutely. I agree. And when
So
you talk about that, like from the advocacy standpoint, advocating for yourself, I think like some of the work that you've done advocating for women's rights on a global level, can you talk about anything significant that you've been able to accomplish through your advocacy work?
not significant. I
Well,
do a
I
lot
think
of
of something
stuff.
really big and significant that you did in
Um,
New Jersey.
Thank you. Okay, we'll talk New Jersey, even though that's not as sexy as, Uzbekistan. But I was just in Morocco, and I did talk to women while there about their sexual issues. And I
Wow,
guess
that's
just
amazing.
to realize and confirm for myself that the bedroom gap is universal and ubiquitous. So you
Mhm.
and I can go, and I hope someday we will go to any country in the world, and we can talk about the bedroom gap, and whether
Yeah,
they're in Zimbabwe or, New
yeah,
Jersey, there's going to
yeah,
be a commonality to the
yes,
changes that happen in their bodies. So I think there's a
yes,
universality that's what I've learned. I haven't done
yes,
anything significant about it, but that's what I've learned. What I
yes.
have done in New Jersey is 7 years of advocacy with the New Jersey Senate and a very wonderful senator named Shirley Turner, who
Mhm.
she and I believed that when we learned that abortions in New Jersey, the number one cause for unplanned pregnancy in New Jersey was that women couldn't get to their doctor's office, couldn't get
For
bus fare, couldn't
contraception.
afford cab fare for contraception. We said we need contraception to be more easily accessible. So we
Yeah.
fought to get a bill passed that would allow contraception to be renewed by pharmacists, actually.
Uh-huh. Instead of having
And
to go to a doctor's visit every time you needed it. So, thinking about the recent launch of your personal website, how do you feel that the digital platforms have helped you, reach and connect and serve your patients, like from, an accessibility standpoint, being able to find you, that sort of thing?
yeah, I think it's allowed wider access as women are finding me in a broader way. So I'll get patients who say, I I heard you on Sirius XM, Dr. Radio. I live in Iowa, and I
Yeah,
can easily say, well, I'd like you to go to my how can you help me? How can you find me a doctor in Iowa? And
right.
I'll say, go onto my website.
Hmm.
And it's just such a lovely hub. It's, first of all, beautifully designed, so thank you. But
Yeah,
it also provides uh, an ability to organize my different initiatives, to organize the difference between, um, I think it's Maria Sophocles MD.com. Let's see.
it's both. You own both domains, so
Oh,
it directs to both
oh, that's
places. Yes.
great. Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Sorry. We'll edit that out.
Yeah.
But first of all, having a well-designed website helps me organize different parts to my professional
Right.
career, whether it's access to publications or to video or podcasts,
Hmm.
whether it's my virtual practice that has an international component, whether it's linking to my Princeton brick and mortar practice. There's sort of a lot of pieces
Hmm.
to what I do, and it's a home really for
Yes.
people to
Yeah.
get to understand me and the parts of me. And I think for anyone considering a career that can have different aspects,
Hmm.
a good website is a wonderful way to kind of
Yeah.
pull it all together.
Yeah. And I know that there's that people have different opinions about having a personal website, and like your personal brand and things like that. But I think you're so right when, we talk about a website really is the hub of your marketing efforts. It's, everything that you do is connected there. So
Yeah,
it's sometimes can be, some information is static, but if you're keeping it updated with the new things that you're doing and you're always having media mentions, you're on podcasts, you always have something going on, it's a place to archive everything that you've accomplished too, and the places that you've been and the things that you've done.
yeah,
So,
well said.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think
that's so true. That's
yeah,
so true. And it's almost like your personal filing cabinet that
yes,
people can go through, and but
yes,
you can curate it, of course,
right. Yep,
and you can really project the person behind the brand too,
right.
if you want, if you
Yes,
care to.
right.
I like people to know about me, the person, and what makes me happy and what brings me joy. And
Yes,
that's why, I think doing it with you in collaboration, because you know me, has been, to me, it made it easy, actually.
yeah,
It was like asking my friend to do it.
yes,
So it was
yes. And it's a lot.
my friend with benefits.
Yes, and it is easier sometimes to have help, to have a consultant or a copywriter or something like that, because it's hard to write about ourselves in that
It
way.
is.
Like when you're trying to explain who you are and what you do, and how you think about yourself is not necessarily how you want to project yourself. You would need
That's true.
somebody to help you curate that information about you.
That's true. So that there's value to what you do. It's not just
Right,
words and pictures on a page, but there's a purpose to it in terms of getting, I guess, SEO or getting
right, yeah,
or having people who go to the website
right,
find what they're looking for. I mean, I
right,
think that's something that many of us might not think of as we're
right,
just thinking about what would I put. So that's
right, yes, yeah. So I guess I only have a couple of questions left, but I wanted to ask you, like, what kinds of advancements in women's health are you most excited about right now? What's happening and what's new in women's health?
Well, I mean, I think the application of AI, of
Mm,
artificial intelligence, to make the patient interaction more streamlined is very exciting. And
uh-huh.
I think the use of um, uh, telemed, of course, that's not really new, but
Right.
it's having its moment where we're seeing, especially in the menopause world, the ability of women to get to a menopause savvy provider
Right.
is just accelerated with
Yes.
new menopause startups that are really finally getting great funding. So that's great. The the at the biotech level, at the science level, the thing that I'm most excited about is three companies that are all kind of racing to find a way to extend the life of the ovary so that the
Yes.
ovary does not fade off into the sunset and you and I develop osteoporosis and heart disease and all
Mhm.
kinds of things at an accelerated rate. I think if we can crack this nut, this will decrease the morbidity and mortality for women from age
Mhm.
50 to 90 dramatically. And
Wow. Yeah.
they're not far from it. They need funding, like all, and
Right.
it's harder if you're a woman-run, woman-led company to get
Mhm.
funding. But I
Yes.
think if we can do it, those three companies are exciting
Wow.
to watch.
That's really cool. That is cool. I've seen some articles about that, about the science behind it and the studies that they're doing. So that is very cool. So my
Mhm.
last question for you today is there one key piece of advice that you would give to a woman who is looking to maintain or improve their sexual health, and what would it be?
It would be to know your body, know yourself. Don't
Yeah,
just say, I'm a partner in this, I'll lie here and pretend or whatever.
yeah,
Define sex for yourself. And even self pleasure, masturbation is a very uh, odd topic in that some people are really comfortable talking about it and
right.
doing it, and other people are not. And I
Yeah,
would say you can even define masturbation for yourself. I have lots of patients that buy toys. We have toys in our office that are, they just use them on their arms. They're just little vibrating eggs or tulips or something. They
yeah,
don't look like a penis, and they just use them on their arms in the shower to feel good, or on
yeah,
their legs, or
yeah.
on their breast. And I tell patients all the time, don't be afraid to have G-rated masturbation. It doesn't have to be X-rated or
Right.
R-rated.
Well, I think so much of it is for just women to become comfortable with their own pleasure, whatever that is. It doesn't even have to be sexual, but that women deserve pleasure in all areas of their lives.
That's right, right.
Yeah.
It's to open that definition, and that sex can be pleasure without traditional images of what you think
Right.
pleasure is, without
Right.
orgasm, without penile penetration.
Right.
I mean, to unhook yourself from that and just let yourself, it's a version of self care, if you ask me, is to
Yeah.
let yourself feel pleasure, whether it's the psychological pleasure of diving into a good book that has a romantic scene, or the physical pleasure of being in the
Right.
shower with some toy or whatever you
Yeah.
like. So
Yes.
that's kind of, I think, how we begin. That's
Yes.
how we
Yeah.
begin.
Know yourself.
Yeah.
Know yourself and
Yeah.
educate yourself, and don't
Yeah.
feel intimidated to advocate for yourself. I think that's a really important thing for women in midlife, that
Exactly.
they learn how
Exactly.
to speak up and use their voice. Thank
Well,
you for
thank you.
being thank you
Thank
for
you for
being
listening.
that voice for us, Dr. Sophocles. It's been
It's my
so good
pleasure.
to talk with you.
It's been my pleasure. I really, really appreciate the time that you take to make sure my my site, my brand, and
Thank
my
you.
message finds an audience. So thank you for
Yeah.
believing in that.
It's good. It's very good. It's important work, and it's important to me. It's become an important part of our work, even at Leverage, has been to work with women business owners and leaders and organizations. We're pretty much an all-female agency, and so we
Yeah.
want to help and raise and elevate those voices of women that are doing amazing things in the world for women. And so this is a soft spot for me. This is important to me, and you're doing important work. So I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we love men too. Do not,
We
this is
do.
not male
Yes, we
bashing,
do. No, not at all. Not at all. I do
and we
like
need
men,
them,
one in
and we
particular.
need to learn this too. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sophocles. And again, I want to put up her website again. You can find her at Dr. Sophocles, mariasophocles.com, or mariasophoclesmd.com. We have 2 domains for her, and they both redirect there. So if that's easier to remember, you can use that. And then you can also learn more about her practice, Women's Healthcare of Princeton, at princetongyn.com. So thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.